Welcome back to Unfiltered Unspoken. And Sue is back there jamming. So, yay. Thank you for being a guest today on Unfiltered Unspoken Podcast. We told you we're going to keep sharing life experiences. Welcome, Sue. Sue, if you could introduce yourself to the audience.
Sure. First, yeah, I got to be jamming those jams. That was a nice little beat going on there. So you got to be able to have fun. I am Sue, and I am the founder of My Step Ahead. I'm a master certified life coach, and I'm a keynote speaker. But most of all, while I speak about my life experiences, who I am, what I do is not who I am anymore. And what I mean by that is that my life experiences no longer define me. I define them. And that's a lot of what we're going to be talking about tonight. But I'm an author. I get to do all kinds of cool, fun stuff. It's all about helping people take their next step ahead. I'm founder of My Step Ahead, and I'm the chief instigator of the Dare to Believe movement. And again, we'll get into all that stuff. But I'm thrilled to be here and just be able to share some of my story, share not only my woundedness, but more importantly, where my healing has come from and how God's using that now to help other people as well.
Thank you so much for being on with us this evening, Sue. Just as every episode, we always like to start at the beginning. Let us know what your childhood unit was like growing up, if you suffered any traumas while, an adolescent.
Mm-hmm. Sure. And you've already put the trigger warning out there, so I don't feel the need to reiterate it, but what I'm about to share may be triggering. So if there are little ears in the room, maybe you need to go give them a coloring book or something like that. Having said that, when I was 7 years old, I was raped by a classmate. I was 7 years old, first grade, and he held me against my will for 45 minutes. So you can imagine 7 years old, first grade, just starting to get to know life, have fun, start learning in school. And my life got hit with that right away. It is scientifically proven that trauma literally rewires how your brain processes things. So since that happened at such a young age, I didn't have a chance to be a normal kid. My mind immediately went into survival mode. Unfortunately, that meant buying the lie my perpetrator told me right before he left. And that was, don't tell anybody. And unfortunately, I didn't for 15 years to my senior year of college. Now, there's a lot in between there in terms of what my family unit was like. I have 4 other siblings. Mom and dad were married. They divorced after 34 years of marriage. But other than that, for quite a while there, it was good until dad's alcoholism took over. There was what I've since learned to be emotional abuse, which is almost standard in any kind of dysfunctional home. And what I've learned since then is that mom and dad were hurt people, and they were hurting their kids and they didn't know it. And they did the best that they could. And I love them, and I honor them, and I cherish them. They've both since passed in the last couple of years. And what I've learned even more is that even though we had a lot of rocky years, because everybody did the hard work of healing, our relationships were restored to better than ever before. And that's really all we remember. In fact, we even almost laugh about some of the things that happen now. So all that to say, and there'll be a thread throughout our conversation tonight, is healing is possible. And I'm living proof of that.
I love it. I love it. And we love you. Love it that you're able to come on and share the testimonies, even now that you have gotten through that journey, but to show people the struggle of getting through that journey. I wanted to go back to you being inappropriately assaulted at the age of 7 years old. And you said it was in school, correct?
I'm sorry, say that again.
Was it in school?
It was a classmate after school.
Okay, so after school. How did he get you in the position to do that? What?
He enticed me. It was, hey, I want to show you something. And 7-year-old curiosity, doesn't think anything about it. It took a long time until I could be able to say that without blaming myself, though, because when I finally, it's important to say that this is 2024. So 10 years ago is when I first started dealing with my trauma. That's over 4 decades after it happened. So I literally had almost my entire life of other stuff on top of that we had to dig through. And so when we were first dealing with it, I was applying my 40-year-old knowledge to a 7-year-old mindset. And what I mean by that is that I was blaming myself. Hindsight's 2020. So I should have known better. I could have done this. Why didn't I do that? It's my fault. I should have said something. And I was blaming a 7-year-old girl with the knowledge of a 40-year-old. And that was not fair to her. So one of the most pivotal things that my counselor had me do as I was healing was having to deal with that. And we'll get to that. I don't want to jump too far ahead, but to answer the question more specifically, my perpetrator enticed me in the woods saying he wanted to show me something. And then things transpired from there.
Did you say in the woods?
Mm-hmm. There was a small strip of woods on the school property. So we were all walking home. This is early 70s. So everybody walked. It was safe. There were no concerns. Literally, the whole neighborhood was walking. And he just enticed me and we went off into the woods. The other part of this is that because it was the early 70s, rape wasn't on the radar. It wasn't on the radar for me. It wasn't anything that was discussed. I didn't know to say anything, and nobody knew to ask any questions. So the only person that did anything wrong that day was my perpetrator.
Goodness, I'm so sorry that took place, especially at such a young age. Now, had you had, thinking back on things, had you had any other type of run-ins with this particular student, or, were there clues, that kind of made you aware that it may have gone that way?
No, none whatsoever. It just seemed like a very innocent thing. What I'm about ready to say, not everybody gets to this point, and I never expected to be at this point. And it was only with the help of my counselor I was able to get to this point. All that to say that I can now have compassion on my perpetrator. And what I mean by that is if rape wasn't on my radar as a 7-year-old, what was he experiencing or being exposed to that put it on his radar? And that helped me have more compassion. That doesn't discard or excuse anything that happened at all. It just helps me understand that he also was a hurt kid, and he was acting out on that hurt.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, did you feel as though that something happened to him?
I didn't for a really long time, not until I was dealing with it with my counselor, when she just asked me that question of what might he have been experiencing or been exposed to. And over time, as I just kept thinking about that and did my hard work, then I was able to start seeing that as well. But that's not a place you get to easily, and it's not a place you get to automatically either. And again, a lot of people don't get there, and there's no expectation for any survivor to get to that point. That just happens to be my part of the story.
Mm-hmm. So I was going to ask, why didn't you tell your parents?
I didn't know anything wrong happened. I knew something had happened, but I didn't know what. And so I didn't know what to say or to say anything, and they didn't know to ask. They were fearful because their daughter was 45 minutes late from school. So mom came looking, and she was calling my name, and my mom rescued me because she came looking for me. She loved me enough to come looking for me, and that saved me from whatever else might have happened. So, I didn't know to say anything, and nobody knew to ask because it wasn't on the radar.
Goodness. Now, with that being said, after, that took place, what, if you can remember, what were, the changes, within yourself, or, what kind of stance did you take after that? Was it something that you feel adults should have noticed, or do you think there was an outward change at all after that event?
I don't know. I mean, I don't have a lot of memory from that time. They're starting to come back as I heal, but I don't have a lot of memories of that. Like I said, I can look at it now from an adult viewpoint and understand some of the responses, and that those responses were out of fear. When your daughter is 45 minutes late, and you don't know, long before cell phones were even a figment of anybody's imagination, you go look at it, and I hate to say, we lived about a half mile, half mile, 3/4 of a mile away from the school. So that tells you how concerned mom was. She was tracing my steps. She was coming to find her daughter.
And that's beautiful that she was able, that whatever he could have did more, she intervened on it. So that's definitely a blessing. And again, like I said, I'm so sorry that happened to you. After that happened to you, were I guess any changes in school or at home? I think Sid kind of asked that question as well. Did your parents notice any difference in you after that happened? Did they ever question it?
I'm sorry, did they ever question what?
That changes within you. Did they ever question why are you acting different? Like what's
I think I didn't give them the opportunity, because how my survival part, protection part took over was in the form of wearing masks. And I was the good girl. I was the one that had it all together. Sue didn't have any issues. Sue was your go-to gal. And all those things started carrying over to high school, and especially in college. So I don't know that there were any behavioral changes, because I shut down and, ride my bike or whatever, go to school, did well in school, played during the summer. When I was in 6th grade, I was on. So, I was a high achiever. I was just, I was involved, and I was successful, and I was doing whatever I could do. So I looked like a normal kid, because these things, I speak in retrospect. And I look back at it now, I realize that my survival part, my protector part, was to keep myself from feeling the pain. And therefore, I projected the image that I was okay, and that I wasn't struggling, and that I didn't have any issues. So there was no reason to ask any questions.
Understood. And what was it like, returning to school and seeing this person, like it just another regular old day? What effect did that have on you?
Yeah. I don't have a lot of memories of that, so I really don't know. I can say when I found my school class picture from 1st grade, I was able to pick this person out immediately. And the very first time I saw the picture, my stomach jumped, and I kind of had to work that through a little bit. So it's still one of those bittersweet pictures at times. And I'm getting emotional when this happens. I won't say, please forgive me. I'll say, please understand. There are times that the depth of my story still hits me. And for whatever reason, right now is one of them. It is, I wonder what happened to him. I wonder what he remembers. I've wondered what would happen if I saw him again. And at the same time, some of that is just energy. I don't need to spend that direction, because I don't want to stay stuck in that time period. I'm not there anymore. I'm here. I'm doing a whale of a lot of good for a lot of people, and there's only bigger things ahead. So I don't want to stay tied to that. I use that now as a springboard and as a catalyst to be able to bring healing to other people.
I love that. That's powerful. Okay, so you also mentioned that a lot of it you try to suppress it in your earlier school, but going into high school, your upper grades, it started to affect you. Can you tell us some of the ways that it started to affect you?
Yeah, I struggled a lot with insecurity. And while all that can be a normal high school teenager thing, mine was amped up about 10 times. I felt like I didn't belong. I was doing a lot of things. What I've since learned is that I did those because if I was seen, then I felt I had value. So I was doing things to be seen. I was in the chorus 4 years. I was in symphonic band. I was in marching band. I was in theater. I played basketball senior year of high. So I did all these things so that I was seen because then people knew I existed and therefore I had value. Now, did I know that back then when I was 16, 17, 18? Absolutely not. I had a sense that there was something inside where I felt uneasy, where I felt yeah, I felt some hurt or something, but I didn't know how to ask for help. So there are times I acted out. I had a real anger issue. I had a real anger issue. I would kick walls. I would punch lockers. One time I dented a locker when I punched it. I worked at a fast food place and I would go in the walk-in and I'd punch boxes. So I had a lot of anger, but I never tied it back to this. So I had, just a lot of things, just, searching for significance, if you want to use that phrase. Um, Something that happened my junior year of high school as well. We were visiting somebody, a family member, and they're a nursing home, and there was an incident in the nursing home. And my brain, because to this point in time, my brain's not processing things correctly. So I interpreted this person's call for help and an attendant not getting to them, as fast as you would think they would, as nobody cares. So then my brain warped that out to say, well, if nobody cares, why do I want to live? So that's kind of started a spiral there for a while. Um, but obviously I didn't act on that. I am here. And actually a friend said something to somebody and they intervened, which was probably really good. So, when you start off base, when I was 7 years old, I started off base. And the longer you're off base, the further from base you get. So by the time I'm 16, 17, 18, add in teenagers, being a teenager, add in hormones and everything else. So I'm just a hot mess and beyond by this point in time. So I wasn't processing things. When I was 16, my best friend from sixth grade was moving out of state. She had a couple different groups of friends. And I was in one of them, but I wasn't in the bigger group of friends. And that bigger group of friends had a going away party for her. She had me overnight the day or two before she left. And we were talking and she was telling me about the going away party this other group of friends had for her. And I appreciate her honesty because she shared that I wasn't invited because that other group of friends, quote unquote, didn't like my personality. Now, as a 16-year-old, it's absolutely crushing. And I didn't let myself cry a tear for 2 years because of that. So I was not well. I wasn't processing things correctly. Now, what I can also say is when that friend and I reunited after 25 years, we sat and talked for 6 hours and could have kept going. And it was as if nothing ever happened. It wasn't her fault. She loved me enough to tell me that. But I love the fact that we're still in touch now and connecting and as if nothing ever happened. So again, healing can happen.
Absolutely can. Now, what was the next, I guess, pivotal point, in your significant point in your life that, now that you can look back on and either realize it's a part of your healing or, was a part of what you need to heal from?
Yeah, because the healing really didn't start till 2014. So we're not at that healing part yet. We're still in the piling on the woundedness and living in that woundedness for a while. So I would say college was the pivot point and the starting point. I went to a small college in Northwest Ohio. Absolutely loved it. But again, because I'm going to use the word screwed up in high school, I brought that to college because college is a hotbed of stress. And excuse me, I've since earned a master's in college student development, so I look at it from the other side of the coin as well. But when I was in college, that insecurity ramped up even more. I did not have a good roommate situation. Just was searching for anywhere to belong, and I was going to play basketball. but I was an accounting major. And for whatever reason, I was blowing off class. So I was called into the dean of students office, probably within the first 3 or 4 weeks of school, and was discussed about my time management and those kind of things, and decided it was best for me not to be on the basketball team because I wasn't going to be able to hold up the academic requirements. But that intervention, that ended up being such a key point in my development. My dean of students is Ed Highland, and he has had a significant role in my life. What started that one conversation of time management, because I think it was my advisor called him and said, she's not coming to class and she wants to do this. I don't know how she's going to do all that. So he reached out to me. We talked for a while, and there was something about Ed that just made it safe to talk. And I was like, I kind of need to talk to somebody, and he seems like somebody that can help. So I made another appointment. And what ended up happening was that he became my confidant. And for 4 years in college, I would meet with Ed probably the first 3 years, almost every week. And we would sit there and talk for a couple hours about whatever was going on. And that was, I cannot tell you how pivotal that was, that this administrator took the time to care about me and my success and my story, and help me along. Now, senior year, in between there, again, still searching for significance, trying to be seen. It took on a different flavor because then I was over involved in college activities. I was on the student activities board. My junior year of college, I was coordinating the fall homecoming, the winter formal, and a spring 12-hour dance-a-thon, all in 1 year. I was also pledging a sorority. And then I was already a little sis of a fraternity. And then I was running track senior year. And I was in theater. So you can see all these things, these same commonalities, this whole thing of, if I'm seen, I have value. But one of the added twists to this is where my eating disorder started in. Eating disorders and emotions are enemies. And eating disorders have nothing to do with food and everything to do with unresolved issues. So for me, obviously, I had a lot of unresolved stuff I'm bringing to college. By this point, I'm 21. And because my brain was not processing things correctly, I started getting uncomfortable in the dining hall. It was a small dining hall. There was one window for meals. If you miss it, you miss the meal. So I'd get over there, but because I didn't have a lot of friends, oftentimes I was eating by myself. So my mind starts warping it out that, and here's the generalities, everybody is looking at me. So because I continued to paint the picture and wear the mask that Sue's your go-to gal, Sue's got it all going on, you need something done, go to Sue, it'll get done without a problem. That was the mask I was wearing. That was the persona I was portraying. And what I've since learned is that if I kept busy, I didn't have to think. And if I didn't have to think, I didn't have to feel. And if I didn't have to feel, I didn't have to deal with my stuff. Now, did I understand that then? No. But the eating disorder ramped up. And I started, while I may have been wanting to get another serving of food in the cafeteria, normal everyday need, I had painted the picture Sue had no needs. So I was afraid of being found out. So I'd dump my tray, get out of Dodge, and I'd snack instead. And I learned to curb my hunger. So those were some of the things that were going on throughout, other things I had to heal from. And where the healing really started was senior year of college. Ed had gone over to the vice president for development office, taken a promotion, and made himself, had an appointment to see him. Really wasn't sure how keen I was about having to go into the president's office anytime I wanted to talk to Ed. But he made himself very clear the first time out that he'd still be available to me and nothing was going to change. So last semester of college, Ed kind of knew he had a student that wasn't really ready for the work world. And he would give me different assignments. We saw each other about every 2 weeks. And he would give me different homework assignments. So one day we're going over the assignment and talking about things. I don't remember the question. I do remember what I call inspecting the weave of his carpet and just saying, well, when society tells you not to tell anything, not to say anything, and I've stopped. And my healing started with this question. Ed looked at me and said, Sue, did somebody hurt you? I said, yeah. He said, your parents? I said, no. Somebody else? Yeah. What happened? And for the first time, 15 years later, I told my story for the first time. That's when the healing started.
Wow, that is powerful. I want to jump back really quick.
Sure.
And then my next after Sid, I want to jump.
I know, we're jumping
back
everywhere
for a
because
minute.
my story jumps everywhere. So.
Yeah, and I love it. I love it. And we try to be as transparent as possible so that the
Right,
audience can
right.
see like this is
Mhm.
real. This is what really people really go through.
Life is not linear. So,
No, it is not. I want to ask, when did the eating disorder start, and how bad did it get?
yeah, I would say it started probably in high school, the last year or two of high school, but it really ramped up in college. Yeah, I started getting uncomfortable. And that was the first thing. I started getting uncomfortable being in an environment around food and having people eating around people. But it really ramped up in college, and probably I'm thinking maybe junior year. I'm not quite sure, which would make sense as I look back because all that stress I was under probably helped kick it as well, because like my psych prof was concerned I was slipping into clinical depression and referred me into the counseling agency in town for an evaluation. Now the psychologist there didn't think it was depression, just thought I was stressed out and needed a break. Now again, because I couldn't be found out that Sue had any problems, because I didn't want anybody asking questions, I did not take that break. I finished the semester because I didn't want anybody asking questions about what's going on. Why is Sue so stressed? So that's probably when it started.
Got it. And when you were able to tell your story, what effect, did that have on you? Did it, kind of spark something, that you had never felt previously, or was it empowering? How did you feel about that?
Petrified. I mean, I didn't get to the empowerment for a long time. I was absolutely petrified. I didn't know the secret. I didn't know there was a secret, first of all. And I certainly did not know the secret needed to come out. I'm very glad it did. And it's scary. And in a way you don't quite understand at the start, it's also the start of liberation. I was petrified, and I was walking back. Ed's office was at the front of campus, and the student union's in the center. And it's a small campus, only, I don't know, a few blocks, I don't know how many blocks, 5, 6 blocks wide, big or something like that. So I was walking back to the student union, and I felt like I had a scarlet letter on my head. I felt like everybody knew, that everyone was looking at me, and they could tell, like I had it stapled across my head. I just told Ed I was raped. That's what it felt like. So I really I think my guess is I probably pulled in. I was down at the sorority house at this point in time. I had a room to myself, so I could kind of disappear a little bit. And the next week, Ed had asked if I told anybody, or if I told my counselor in town. I told him no. So I later asked Ed if he would go to that appointment with me, and he got back to me and agreed to go. So he drove me there the next week. And I was shadow boxing with my counselor, because obviously I'm bringing in a guest that he didn't know was coming. Excuse me. And, was trying to figure out what was going on. And I'm just like shadow dancing like crazy. So the counselor looks at Ed and says, well, what do you think? And Ed looks at him and said, I think Sue needs to quit shadow boxing and tell you what she told me. So, but that was powerful, because telling the story once is petrifying. Telling it again takes another step towards owning it. And because you don't always own something just because you tell it for the first time. So it was, I think those were a couple of the things that I experienced immediately afterwards.
Okay. Did you ever have to be hospitalized for the eating disorder, or is it something that you just overcame and learned ways how to heal from it?
I was never hospitalized. My counselor had a few conversations with me where I was talking for my life. This is back in the early 2000s. And there were a couple times that I was talking for my life. And I kept telling her, I can gain weight, I can gain weight. And she said, I'm going to give you one more chance. Because she was wanting to refer me. She said, I'm talking inpatient or intensive outpatient treatment. She's like, I know you still have to work. She said, I'm giving you one more chance. Prove to me you can gain weight. It has not been a conversation ever since. So I was dangerously, I was not in a good place. And Amanda is an eating disorder specialist. So I was in the right place. I still am in the right place. And thankfully did not have to be hospitalized. So.
For someone that's, dealt with any type of condition like that, or, is it something that you always kind of worry about being an issue when, there are things going on in your life? Like, for instance, someone that may have been a former drug addict, that might be something they worry about, that might affect their sobriety if they're going through things, normal rate of life type of things. Mm-hmm. But is it something that you were able to kind of completely overcome, or is it something that maybe your mind might resort to, or feel like it's something that is comforting in times of need?
Mm-hmm. Great question. The eating disorder that I'm in recovery from is called OSFED, Other Specified Feeding and Eating Disorder. And what that means is I don't meet the diagnostic criteria for anorexia or bulimia or overeating or binge or anything like that, yet I have disordered eating. So having said that, there's no way that a person with an eating disorder looks. No one would know now that I'm in recovery from an eating disorder and periodically still struggle just by looking at me based on assumptions. And those are one of the things I like to educate about when I go out and speak, is that there are no typical appearances of an eating disorder. So with that, I would say that yes, I still struggle with it. Eating disorders are addictions. So I have an addictive personality, just like my brother does, who's 12 years sober, just like my dad did when he was 33 years sober before he passed a year and a half ago. Just like a drug addict, anyone like that, it is an addiction. The challenging part is that in every other addiction, to survive, you avoid it. You can't use it. With my addiction, to survive, I have to eat. I can't avoid food or I will die. So that's the one twist to it where it makes it different. At the same time, the struggle is still the same. And what I mean by that is that when the emotional stuff and stress kicks in, yes, my mind wants to go back to that. Case in point, Dad died a year and a half ago. My dad and I are insanely close, and that is him right there. And for a while there, I've been meeting with my dietitian every 3 weeks, just maintaining, doing well, everything like that. And then when Dad died, we were going every week. And we went every week for probably a good 8 or 9 months until we started backing it out to 2 weeks. And it's just been just been earlier this year that we finally went back to 3 weeks. Even tonight, yesterday and today, I've had a lot of stuff going on and my brain was just too short-circuited. I couldn't make a food decision for what I wanted to eat for dinner. So I ordered pizza last night and I had pizza again tonight because I don't have the bandwidth to figure out what I want to have for dinner, even though there's leftovers in the refrigerator. So one of the things I've done with my dietitian early on is we came up with an emergency meal plan where if I have those times where I just can't figure something out, I have a couple things I can go to. It might be cheese and crackers. It might be pizza. It might be something like that. But we have a couple emergency go-tos so that I'm still eating and not restricting. That's the key part, is I still need to eat. I texted her earlier today and told her, just checking in. I'm finding myself struggling with food choices last night and today. So yeah, it's still an everyday deal.
Can you tell us, for the audience, can you, just for a friend looking at another friend, and I know, and I tell people we have to be careful. You can't come at
Mhm,
people a certain way, but I can come at you and say that I may have a concern,
mhm,
because can
mhm.
you let us know signs that a friend has a eating disorder or is struggling with a eating disorder?
Sure. And real quick before I go into that, we can get to this at the end. If people want to email me, we'll have my email and everything. I have something called You Don't Have to Be an Expert, where you can reach out and you can help somebody else without being an expert. So I love to get that in your hands. I've done one of the signature talks I do is called The Inside Life of an Eating Disorder, where I share my story and we talk about what to look for, but even more so, how can I empower you to help your friend and express concern without um, without stepping out of bounds. So, having said that, one of the biggest things you can do is simply say that. Focus on observable behavior, not "Hey, man, you're really looking thin" or anything like that. And I say that because when you comment on appearance, you may very well be validating the eating disorder behavior. I'm going to say that again. When you comment on appearance, you may very well be validating the behavior that is getting them to that appearance. So we never want to comment on appearance. We focus on observable behavior. Sally, I'm concerned. I noticed that you're only eating half your lunch and then you dump it. But then I see you eating chips an hour later. I'm just concerned. I just noticed this. Hey, I've noticed that, it seems like after we eat, you're going to the bathroom all the time. Is everything okay? Because that may be purging. So it could be any number of things, but it's focusing on observable behavior. It's not attacking, saying, why are you doing this? Hey, you're doing this. What's going on? Because for any of us, as soon as you hear the word you, our walls go up and I am not listening to you. Instead, I'm trying to figure out what's your angle and what do I need to protect myself from. So when we approach it from a friend's standpoint, observable behavior, and just letting them know that you're concerned. You don't even have to say, do you have an eating disorder? Just because that's not your call to make. Just express concern. Are they isolating? Are they skipping meals? Do they have a huge stash of snack food somewhere? There's secrecy, all those kind of things. Are they are you noticing in the gym class or in the locker room, are they constantly weighing themselves? Any kind of those things. The other thing is our terminology. Things that we might say in everyday conversation are absolute off limits. Things like, "Man, you look so anorexic." "Oh no, I need to be good so I can eat Thanksgiving, so I'm not going to eat the day before." All those things. Thanksgiving is one of the worst holidays for somebody with an eating disorder because it is so food centric. And may I just say that Thanksgiving is just another meal. We make a big brouhaha out of it, but it's just another meal. And yet we try to put value and worth on food, saying, "Oh, I'm going to be bad. I'm going to have that piece of cake." You are not bad, and the cake is not bad. What I love about working with my dietitian is I'm not told I can't eat anything. The issue is eating in balance. The body needs carbs, fats, and proteins in an equal balance every single day. Carbs are the only thing that give your brain energy. Protein is the only thing that rebuilds your strength. And the fats in food give you the sensation of being full. Without a balance of any of those, your body will be off. When I first went into recovery, I found myself feeling bloated. And I was talking with my dietitian, Kristen, about it. And what she explained to me, and it makes perfect sense, and most of all, she was right, it was that my body was learning to trust me because I had denied it food and equal nutrition for so many years. I'm talking decades. So when I was feeding it, as we were working on my meal plan, as we were feeding it, my body's hoarding. I said, "Hey, she's giving me something. I'm going to hang on to this because I don't know when she's going to feed me again." And as my body learned that it could trust me, that I was going to take care of it, all that bloating ended up settling itself out because my body said, okay, I don't have to hang on to this because I know I'm getting a steady supply. Those are just a couple of things that I've learned through the eating disorder story and journey. And it's an ongoing thing.
Absolutely. I think I've said before, even the small things that we find so just normal, in life. For example, you're sick, you've been throwing up. You might admire how your body is looking, and it's not right. It's not right.
Mm-hmm.
So there's little things that can lead up to big things. So I agree with noticing the small things, noticing patterns, especially with yourself. You can put a halt to a lot of that. Just catching things before they get too bad. So I completely understand. Now, with that being said, after you started speaking to therapy, seeing a dietitian, things like that, with the healthy brain, what was the next step? What did that kind of motivate you to do? Was that kind of the trajectory that got you into My Step Ahead, or how did you actually get into feeling like that was your next goalpost?
Yeah, great thought. Great question. So, senior year, I tell Ed. Then I go off to graduate school in Minnesota. And it was early in the fall semester. My supervisor was in her office late at night, about 7:00 at night. So I went and talked to her. Unbeknownst, ended up telling her the story as well. So the next day, she was able to set up an appointment with a counselor on campus. So for the next 2 years, I started counseling there. It was okay, but because I was so new at telling my story, I kind of was trying to figure out what my story was. So it was helpful, but I can't say I made a lot of progress there. I was in and out of counseling for a while in the late 90s and late 90s, early 2000s. And then I was okay for a while, which was really cool. Eating wasn't an issue, emotions, everything seemed to be fine until 2005. And a friend of mine, very close friend of mine, passed away. 3 years later, in 2008, I'm grieving her as if it was yesterday. And my eating disorder red flags are coming up. And one of my big red flags, as I alluded to earlier, I open the refrigerator door, can't make a decision, I shut it, and I want a snack. So reached out to my pastor. I'm a Christ follower. So I reached out to my pastor. He connected me with Amanda, who I'm still with now. So I started meeting with Amanda in 2008. The first few sessions where she's getting to know me, my story, my history and everything, and have me do some different exercises. And the rape comes out in the second session. She'd had me write a life timeline, and it was the second entry on my timeline. And she looked at me and said, Sue, this is huge. Have you ever worked it through with anybody? I said, wouldn't know what that looks like. So I guess that's your answer. We had to take the next 6 years to get me stronger in the present before we could go back to the past, because I was letting myself be manipulated, as being emotionally abused, and I didn't realize it at that point in time. Came to discover there was spiritual abuse in my story that I never knew about either. So there was a lot that I had to learn. 2014 is when I finally started dealing with the rape. There was a movie that came out by the name called Ragamuffin. It was based on the life of the late Christian musician Rich Mullins. And one of my favorite quotes from Rich is over my head. It says, in the end, it's not going to matter if you have a few scars. It will matter if you didn't live. Now, Rich died in 1997. This movie came out and talked about his life, and it was a really hard watch, especially the first 20 minutes. I was with Mom, who still didn't know a lot of my story. I'm like, just got something in my eye, Mom, because I couldn't be found out. I was still playing that game. Later that year, the producers and family friends of Rich, who were involved in the movie, put on a retreat to continue a discussion about the themes of the movie. And one of those themes talked about the masks we wear. A very common theme in my life up to this point in time. I went to the retreat. Through that retreat, the first year I owned my story. I was in denial about my story. I didn't like my story. And they had very courageously and boldly asked us to share our stories in a private Facebook group for just the folks going to this retreat. Now, mind you, there are 50 of us. Most of us total strangers. The only commonality we have is this movie and having something stirred in our hearts. 2014 is also the year I was first dealing with the rape. So when you're dealing with the trauma, all the emotions come back. And because emotions and eating disorders are enemies, my eating disorder behavior is kicking in. So I have a perfect storm going on in 2014. So I go to this retreat. I shared my story in the Facebook room for the first time. And honestly, all day long, I am checking multiple times every hour, waiting for it, just waiting for one comment to justify my perception. Because up to now, I have been told it's my fault. I'm screwed up. I'm too far gone. I'm a total waste of space. Those are all the lies I was believing. I called myself the holy exception, believing the lie that, again, generalities, that everything in the Bible was good enough for everyone else but me, because I was too screwed up, too far gone, and total waste of space, and no way God could love me. That retreat proved me wrong. And there's nothing special about the retreat other than the staff gets out of the way and lets Holy Spirit do his job. That's where my healing started. So I went back the next year, and then I had to grieve my story. And that was a whole different process. The third year, 2016, I went back, and the nugget I walked away with was, I am valuable to God. And that's when things started changing. That's when I started writing my book. You showed the cover at the start. This Much I Know, the Space Between. It's on Amazon and Kindle. And that has my story in detail. And that's when the speaking started. I started speaking to a local class here at the high school about eating disorders. And then that led to speaking at state level conferences for those in student development. And that led to speaking for national conferences for the University of Maryland College of Medicine does an advancing school mental health conference every year. So I did a couple video recorded seminars for them. I've spoken at the national conference called the Association for Christians in Student Development. I've spoken at that national conference the last 3 years. I did the other book you showed, the Breaking the Silence Voices of Survivors, Volume 1. So all of it started when I finally took a chance on love, and when I started to dare to believe that I matter. And that's where my step ahead started springing from, was all that started happening. 2016, I started working with my dietitian. I mentioned earlier that Thanksgiving is the worst holiday for someone with an eating disorder. Just started dealing with my dietitian, or working with her, not dealing with her, and starting to learn how to eat right. And I go into a holiday that is food-centric. That was an absolute nightmare. And to the point that my dietitian called me because I was texting her for support. And what happened was I was also volunteering with an online group called Beating Eating Disorders. And we were taking shifts, and I found myself, while I'm massively struggling, just supporting other people. I was like, this is kind of cool, and it's kind of weird at the same time, because we tend to think that we have to have it all figured out before we can help somebody. 2015, the year prior, my pastor at church was talking about growth. And he had this whole illustration lined out on stage. And his question was, what does it take to help somebody? He said, you only have to be a step ahead. That, coupled with a conversation I had with a friend in 2001, where we talked about step by step, is what led to my step ahead. That experience of helping others while I was still struggling, that idea of speaking while I was still figuring out my story, I realized that you only have to be a step ahead to help the person behind you. So I found in my step ahead, speaking, life coaching, and then the writing that I do, we are all about empowering others to share their story while they are healing. We talk about the intersection of mental health and faith. Is one of the things I speak about across the country, because they do intersect. They are not parallel. They're not opposites. They intersect. And as Christians, as Christ followers, we are finally starting to understand that, because for a long time there's been a stigma in the church about mental health, and my step ahead exists to blow that stigma out of the water.
Love it. I want to ask really quick.
Sure.
Uh, You said there were a couple timelines that Amanda had mentioned. You gave us number 2, and that was the eating disorder. What was number 1?
Mm. Number 1 was when I won my dog when I was 6 years old. And that was I had a dog, and I won her when I was 6. She died when I was 18, and she was my friend because if nobody else, when I felt in middle school and high school, nobody else will listen, my dog will listen to me. And so that was number 1. What is interesting is when I was going over the timeline with Amanda, even just after reading the first one, she said, I already have questions, but I've already looked ahead. And that's when we jumped number 2. And what we never went back to what those questions were, but I think I know what it was. And it's very revealing for me now to realize that not putting my birth on that timeline was indicative of how much I didn't think I mattered. Because my birth wasn't worthy of being noted. Let's just say I don't have that belief anymore because I celebrate my birthday every year. So because life is worth celebrating. And that whole thing is what led to the Dare to Believe movement. The Dare to Believe movement was launched by My Step Ahead a year and a half ago. And it is all about challenging people and how you answer the question, do I believe that I matter? Do I believe that I matter? It's not enough for someone else to say that you matter. Until each of us can answer that question in an affirmative, confident, solid bedrock way, the hard truth is permanent life change cannot and will not happen. You're going to be herky-jerky in spurts, and you're going to fall back because everything you do is based on how you answer that question in each situation. So that all started when early on working with Amanda, she asked me questions. I'm getting to the emotions and stuff. And it was, I like, it doesn't matter. And I would just shut off because I couldn't handle it. And every time without fail, she would look at me and say, what you're really saying, Sue, is you don't matter. And I hated it when she said that because I've since learned she's right. But that's what happened. That's what started the whole Dare to Believe movement. That, and I'm a master certified life coach. So in speaking with my clients and in talking to people after I speak at the merch table or in front of the stage or whatever, I love hearing the stories. And what I've heard from multiple people over the last year and a half, 2 years, is this hint of doubt. Is it too late for me? You don't know what's happened. You don't know my story. How could I do this when all I've known is this? It's too late for me to change. I've already raised my family. I'm just killing time now. I can't go chase my dream. And we disqualify ourselves because of the lie we're believing in our head that whatever has happened is too much for us to be able to go do whatever it is we want to do. So the Dare to Believe movement is all about answering the question, do I believe that I matter?
I love that. Demetria, did you want to swap positions for your last question?
Yep. We are almost at time. This was good. It goes by so fast, the hour. Yeah. So we want to ask really quick. Can you give the audience advice on how you started your journey to healing? Because I think transparency is so much important because there's so many people struggling, and maybe you can be the beacon to help them start that journey.
Sure. The first and hardest step is to reach out. And it's hard because you have to get past yourself and the mental lies and the mental static. And it's best because you have to get past yourself. And what I mean by that is that we are not meant to do life alone. I found my healing in a retreat community called Walking Stick Retreats. I took a chance on love when I didn't believe I was lovable. And these total strangers helped me see that I had worth. Take the chance on love and get past yourself. And that sounds harsh, but I'm a bottom line person. I don't have a lot of fluff to me. I'm just, this is the way it is. So as hard as it is, That is the first critical step, because no one knows that you have a need until you let us know. And no one can help you until you let us know. Don't buy the lie that nobody cares. You've been buying those lies all this time. Where has it gotten you? How's that serving you? You're spinning the wheels. You have to take that chance. If you don't know anyone else that you feel you can trust, if you're not sure where else you could turn, I invite you, please reach out to me. We've spent the last hour together. You've heard a little bit of my heart. Hopefully you know that my desire is to help you and my heart is to support you. I may not be the best person to help you find your healing, but I can help you find that person. It all depends on what the situation is. I'm a life coach. So yes, I help people in that regard within the bounds of life coaching. But separate from that, if you are looking to try to start your healing journey from whatever the situation, I invite you, please reach out to me. I would be honored to be that first contact for you to help you take your next step.
Yes, yes. Now, we do like to call this portion shameless plug. You see all of your information scrolling across the bottom here.
Oh
So you
my.
have the opportunity to let our viewers know how to contact you, how to patronize your services, how to draw traffic to anything that you want, anything you have for sale, anything that you would like to put up.
Look at Dimitri over there jigging.
Yes, that is for you. So you have the floor.
Sure. Shameless plug. All right. Well, so shameless, I'll go ahead and plug it. All right. So your best place to go, there's two places you can go. Go to the daretobelievemovement.com. That website is designed with a bunch of free articles and worksheets where if you're not ready to pick up the phone yet or send an email, there's some stuff there at least to help you kind of start finding something to help you move. I've got a free PDF on that website. It's called Turning Yesterday's Setbacks into Tomorrow's Success. So just go to the website, daretobelievemovement.com. Let me have your email. That's all I need. And it's going to be an automatic download in your box. The other place you can go is to my website, which is also scrolling across the bottom at SueBowles.com. It's BOWLES for the listeners. And there, if you're interested in life coaching, that's where you're going to find me. You can also buy my 2 books there. I've got 2 books out right now, a third one coming. The first one is This Much I Know. I'm trying to get there. There it goes. This Much I Know, The Space Between. That is my story. And the second half talks about the healing journey that I went on to get where I am today, to found this organization, start a global movement and speak across the country and international podcasts and everything. The other book is this one. It's called Breaking the Silence, Voices of Survivors. And this came out in January. It is an Amazon bestseller in 2 categories, and it is 21 stories of survivors. My story is in here, and this is a very powerful, empowering book. It will help you realize that you are not alone. Someone came out of a cult. Someone's husband was murdered. There's my story in there. There's a 3-time cancer survivor. There's domestic abuse. There are so many different stories in there to help you see that there is hope. The other thing, and this will be on my website here shortly as well, is I am also part of Breaking the Silence, Voices of Survivors, Volume 2. In that, I'm going to be talking more about the Dare to Believe movement, the history behind it, and what all it's doing now, and how it can help you. There, we will be having a pre-order link. I'll have that on my website here shortly, where you can just let us know that you want the information when the book releases. The book is going to come out beginning of October. I am super excited for this one. It's going to be even better than the first one. And I don't want to, nothing against volume 2. Let me say it's going to be equally powerful. So those are places you can reach out to me. daretobelievemovement.com and then SueBowles.com. At SueBowles.com, you'll catch me for life coaching and then the books and everything else in between. I love to hear from you.
You muted.
Sorry. Yeah, I was like, sorry, I'm muted. So, all right. You have heard it from Miss Sue Bowles. She has shared a powerful testimony. So anyone that their childhood traumas has affected them into eating disorders, anger issues, just overcoming those things, Sue is here to support you. She is a life coach. And she has tons of free information, as you said, to help you along this journey. So we want to thank Sue for being our guest, and we want to thank you for tuning in to Unfiltered Unspoken Podcast. And as we said, we are going to continue to share life experiences, and we are not going to be stopped until the man above stops us. And that's that, right, Sid?
That's right.
Y'all have a blessed day. Peace.